Right, tennis world number one, Jannik Sinner has reached the semi-finals today of the China Open, but is he about to be banned from the sport? Well, our senior reporter Geraint Hughes joins me now to discuss this a little bit more. So look, Geraint, run me through the ins and the outs of this story and what it means for Sinner going forward.
Right, Sinner's still playing. That's pretty obvious because you just said that he's got through in Shanghai. The reason why there's a lot of controversy, we reported last week, didn't we, that WADA were going to appeal against a decision that backed Jannik Sinner regarding trace elements of a banned anabolic steroid. Let me take you back to March. March this year, we didn't know this, but he tested twice. At the time, we didn't know this. Twice positive for Clostebol, which is a banned anabolic steroid. It's a derivative of testosterone. It's on WADA's prohibited list. Athletes are not meant to go near this at all. So he tested positive at an in-competition test at Indian Wells and an out-of-competition test just before the Miami Open. Trace elements, less than a billionth of a gram of Clostebol. So that is really a small amount. At the time, Sinner argued against a provisional suspension and won that argument. It's a simplistic legal term is that you just prove the likelihood of contamination, and they did. So what then happens, it moves forward to August this year. The ITIA, International Tennis Integrity Agency, that's a long phrase for you, they're kind of in charge of, they take on anti-doping on behalf of tennis, they look into corruption as well, etc., etc. They passed on to an independent tribunal to look into the Sinner case and hear his arguments as to why he believed he shouldn't receive a ban for having a banned anabolic steroid in 2 tests. They agreed with his argument. 3 scientific experts. The argument was that Sinner's fitness trainer in Italy bought an over-the-counter spray, which is used to heal wounds, cuts. That spray was used by Sinner's physio, who cut his hand with a scalpel. So he used it to treat that wound. However, he continued treating Jannik Sinner as a physiotherapist. So massaging him. Sinner also often needs his feet bandaged. He has a skin condition, so his feet get bandaged. He wasn't wearing gloves.
So it
was
got
the
through
physio.
that,
That's the argument. And that would be an explanation, a plausible explanation, that these 3 scientists on a panel agreed with as plausible, that it was a trace element, a billionth of a gram of Clostebol. But Clostebol, yes, small amounts, but as the rule stands at the moment, it's a banned anabolic steroid. That is not good. So, WADA last week we then heard going, they're not happy that Jannik Sinner has been cleared of wrongdoing and that he has received no ban. They have they've lodged an appeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Very, very well-paid lawyers, basically, in Switzerland. They'll look into this case, into this appeal. They will hear Sinner's arguments, his legal team, his representatives. They'll also hear the arguments from WADA, because what WADA want to do here is they are seeking, is the phrase, a period of ineligibility. You and me, Vicky, you call this a ban.
Yes.
Of between 1 and 2 years. So that's not
a long time.
It's a long time. However, for a banned anabolic steroid, the default is a 4-year ban.
Even with trace,
and then it gets. That doesn't come into it yet.
Right,
We're going to. We might talk about that in a moment. It's on WADA's prohibited list. Every January, that list it's updated throughout the year. Every January, it's published. And we're going to talk about this, but I'll say these 2 words once, and then you'll come back to me. Strict liability.
Yes.
It's Jannik Sinner. Any other professional athlete, it's their responsibility as to what goes into or what goes onto their body. However, coming back to WADA, they want this to go to CAS. CAS will rule on it, but the feeling we've got in here is when. I've had a look at CAS's listings. I'll check again, because it could change at any time this afternoon. But they are stacked up to the week before Christmas, which means at the moment, as it stands, Jannik Sinner's case in the Court of Arbitration for Sport is not being held this year. The other thing that's key to sort of say, Vicky, as well, is that WADA are not looking to sort of retrospectively take away titles or money earned. Now, forget the money. Jannik Sinner is a very, very, very wealthy man. I think the one thing that probably mattered to him most, he won the US Open earlier this month.
Yes.
They're not looking to have that taken away from him. I think any ban that they are looking for, they're seeking that 1 to 2 years, would kind of happen immediately. It wouldn't be retrospective, and it wouldn't be taken titles away from them that have not already had some kind of retrospective issue on them. So that's where we stand with Jannik Sinner as to how it's happened and why it's happening. And I know you're going to ask me something else now.
I am, because it's, we talked about the trace elements about this case, tiny amounts that, somebody said they found that wasn't his fault, massaged into his body, whatever.
Yeah.
So what is strict liability then? Strict
liability. Basics of it is that any professional athlete, Jannik Sinner or anyone else, he is ultimately responsible of what goes into his body or onto his body. That includes coaches, entourages, anyone that is within his employ, basically. They got this list. They have to look at everything they take. Supplements, meat, we've heard of contaminated meat, medicines. You'll hear of some things where, for example, a very, very famous case back a long, long time ago of a British skier called Alan Baxter. Vicks in the UK didn't contain a banned substance. Bought in the US, it does. However, looking at strict liability, and I'm going to have to put the old glasses on for this one, because basically what it is, the case here is around contamination, unintentional.
Yes.
That's what Jannik Sinner is going for. However, strict liability as well is, and there's a big argument actually looking into this, and the head of the US anti-doping agency, a guy called Travis Steigart, he's very much saying the athlete, it should be innocent until proven guilty. And that you mentioned these small trace elements that are not going to enhance performance.
It's
why. Yeah. However, WADA's saying the rules are the rules here because that is a nasty substance. What are you even going near it from? Why are you even
Well, he didn't. His physio did.
Yeah, but he is responsible ultimately.
Yes.
But coming back to some strict liability things, there are numbers out there. Some of them I'm going to stay away from because legally, one that it sort of piqued my attention was back in 2010, the Springboks, South Africa, on a tour of the UK and Ireland. Just before they played a test against Ireland, 2 players found to have a banned stimulant in a product. Now, in that product they previously bought, there was nothing in it, no analytical findings. But in the product, the batch that they had, there was a banned stimulant in it. So that's an example of really, really unlucky. They didn't do it knowingly, but strict liability. However, that one was argued another way. A couple of examples from a lot of Olympic sports, a couple of swimmers. There was an Australian swimmer, Brenton Rickard. The IOC eventually withdrew their case against him on strict liability. Shauna Jack, she was a swimmer, received a 4-year ban for something called Lingadrol, but that was retrospectively put back to a 2-year ban. However, she had backing from the Sport Australia Integrity Unit with arguing on her side, yet she still received eventually a 2-year ban. So it
this means there's a lot of effort going into something that was so minute that it didn't even make an impact.
And I think what this might show, Vicky, is that this debate might go somewhere else. There's a lot of conjecture about when this is actually going to get heard, because I can't find a listing for it this year. It could happen in 2025. Jannik Sinner's clear to play, which means could he still play in the Australian Open? Because it might not have been heard and ruled on by then. However, the wider argument is, as you have to trace elements, a billionth of a gram, something that is not going to enhance performance, athletes are getting caught out. So that there is that argument there. But WADA, one of their arguments will be, you've got a banned list, and why do we just let Jannik Sinner go because he's famous and the world #1 tennis player? The rules are there. What are you or your team even going near a product, anything that has got a banned substance in it?
Unless they then had a rule that if it was a tiny trace amount, then it didn't enhance performance. Then...
And that's maybe where we will come to, or certainly have a debate about it.
Thinking.
That is one version of suing it. I could not say that's sensible. That is a version of events that surely CAS will listen to. And there may be some rule changing within WADA. At the moment, though, they have a hardline stance because they're saying their job is to keep the cheats out. And that is a difficult enough job to do.